Hello, everyone. Welcome to Life Edge, where you do not have to make life a mediocre experience. I'm changing cut line a little bit because we have a wonderful group today, Envision Group, and they're from Canada. And we've got Scott Donald and Pat Lipovski who are here to talk to us about making yourself the best you can be. So welcome, Pat, and welcome, Scott.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Well, I'm really happy that you're here. It's a tremendous privilege, and we are very grateful. I'd like to start by asking you, each of you, how you, well, first of all, what is the Envision Group? So would you like to start, Scott?
I'll turn that to Pat as the founder and the person who's been working on Endeavor for over 20 years. I think he can best describe it.
Perfect.
Well, that sounds good. Yeah, and thanks, Scott, and thanks for having us on your show today. It's interesting because the Envision Group, we started the Envision Group about 21 years ago, and the whole concept of our group and every single one of the partners and associates that make up our group, we're here to help people envision and achieve far more than they could do without us. And what we've been doing for years is we've been working with different leaders in a multitude of industries. And our job is to encourage people to really see more and do more. It's almost the same as an Olympic athlete. When they show up in sport and in their discipline, they don't really push themselves and go as far unless they have somebody who's actually encouraging to that sense of potential. So that's really at a very high level, that's the foundation of what we're all about.
Well, great. And Scott, how did you get interested in coaching and training?
Well, some of it just happened organically. I've been involved in a business development capacity with a number of large organizations over 30 years and found that I was getting a lot of enjoyment training and coaching some of the newer and younger people in the organization. So as a result, I reached out to Pat not too long ago, and we found that there was a fit in terms of some of our areas of passion and the things that we believed in. And we've been working together ever since.
Oh, that's great. So what are some of the things that you do today? What are some of the programs that you offer? I'll ask
some
you
of the
that,
programs
Pat.
we offer, yeah, that's all right. I'll take that one. The programs that we offer, years ago, 21 years ago, we started out as leadership and executive coaches. But what we've really experienced over the years is that people don't want to sit back and just be coached. They want perspective, they want tools, they want ideas, and they want somebody to give them a few things to get them going before they're actually coached. And that usually works in unison and usually in some harmony when you're training and developing and really coaching people towards their potential. So what we do today is we do two things. We help people with their bedside manner as leaders. And the second thing we do is we help them with the systems that they use to lead with.
Oh, that's really good. So, okay, we're in such a time of transition, and these years, you're based in Canada, correct?
Yeah, it's interesting, Susan. We're based in Canada, but interestingly enough, we spend a lot of time on the road doing training in other countries and other parts of the world. So 21 years ago, we started off as a Canadian-based company, but today we're looking after leadership development organizations in Europe, in Asia. We just got back some time ago from doing some work in Saudi Arabia. We've done some work, of course, even in professional sport. We've actually started to do leadership development with professional sports franchises because athletes within these multi-million dollar sports franchises have to be leaders themselves in some right. And whether you're a corporate athlete or a physical athlete in sport, a lot of the same ideas and there's a common thread of effective leadership no matter what you do.
Oh, I really like what you're saying. And the fact that you mentioned that you're just back from Saudi Arabia made me think of Saudi's Vision 2030. And to me, that is like a wonderful example of bold leadership vision. Are you familiar with any of those, their programs and that? Oh, please talk to us about it.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because, within Saudi Arabia, just like the rest of the world, and not just Saudi Arabia on their own, many organizations and many companies and many cultures are interested in keeping up with the rest of the world. We're not living in a economy where we're just, dependent based on the people within our own physical surroundings, our own countries, and our own continents. It's a global economy now. And if you don't understand the United Nations of business and leadership, then you're getting left behind. And if you're not pulling up to date some of the different tactics and ideas and strategies of effective leadership, it's not just driven by generations. It's also driven by cultures and different organizations in different places of the world. So it's almost like the matrix of leadership coming into reality today.
Oh, so true. And in this particular case, I'm thinking of Vision 2030. Saudi Arabia is opening their society a great deal so that they'd like to be a hub, an infrastructure hub. And as you were mentioning, in order to achieve that goal, they have to be able to mesh with other cultures and countries. And
well,
I was
really
thinking...
Yeah, sorry to jump in, but it's interesting because there's one organization within Saudi Arabia called the King Abdullah Petroleum Studies and Research Council. They're a group of researchers from all over the world that are really coming together to achieve the 2030 objective that you just talked about and go beyond that. And it's interesting to see different groups of not just academics, but also different groups of leadership that are coming together to really move things forward in all the best of ways. And it's been interesting to watch that and be a part of helping develop it.
That's interesting. Do you also help people with, for example, their acquisitions and mergers and growth ideas about like where and how to make strategic decisions?
Well, it's interesting, Scott. You and I have done a lot of work with different oil and gas related companies. We've done some work with different businesses in the airline industry. We've worked in healthcare, pharmaceuticals. We back to sport. But it's interesting. It's there's a big push right now to really ensure that the quality of leadership is in play, right, Scott? Within different corporations. Would you agree with that?
Well, I think we're seeing a lot of that. And maybe just to add to what Pat is saying, it's not uncommon that as organizations evolve, they'll bring us in to work with a group of leaders, whether it's a fresh batch of new people who've been promoted or working with their senior staff, and then invariably Pat or I or one of our other senior partners will get a call or an email saying, we're at a point now where we need to make a bit of a shift and we need some help from a strategic planning perspective. Can you come in and do that for us? And yes, we can. We have experts who have done this for large multi-billion-dollar companies. So it's sort of a natural evolution that companies will rely on us initially to help train their people in their soft skills and their leadership skills, their communication skills. And then eventually, as we evolve and grow together, they come to us for strategic planning.
Well, so Scott, what's the first thing that you do? How do you get started? If somebody calls you and says, help, we need you now.
Well, I think the first thing is before you get too far down the road, it's really important that we sit down with all the key stakeholders and really understand, where are they today and where do they want to get down the road. And then from that, we can start to build out that plan together. But a lot of it really is just kind of taking a bit of a roadmap with them and getting all the key people in the room to have a discussion. And, we don't have the answers, but we have the methodologies and the experts that can help facilitate those discussions and help people find their best answers.
So how do you overcome the issues of what Daniel Kahneman talks about in terms of cognitive bias and sort of groupthink and which unchecked can maybe turn into like a doomsday cult situation within one's own company with a kind of a mad messiah leader?
It's interesting, yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna let Pat answer this, but I think what I wanted to add to that is I think a lot of times when organizations run into the groupthink, it's because they're doing their own internal strategic planning. So somebody, the highest ranking person in the room, says something, and invariably a good portion of the group with the expertise and credentials that Envision has is that you're now have an outside group that can make it a little bit more comfortable for people to have those conversations, and we can challenge some of the biases that may already exist. Pat, do you want to add to that?
Well, yeah, I don't think Scott and I just look old. We have a little bit of season and experience under us as well. So, it's interesting because when you look at the group that we have assembled together, business is easy until you introduce people. And once you introduce people, you become an organization that needs to be organized. And the interesting thing, Susan, look back on your career. How did you learn how to do strategic planning, as an example?
Are we back?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did I fade out on you? Did I fade out? It's interesting because you look at it. How did you learn how to do strategic planning, if you don't mind me asking you?
Asking me? Or asking Scott? Asking me. Oh, okay. Well, I learned it. I'll be honest. My dad is a geologist, and when he bought a company, a shell company, and decided he had a vision for it, and we would go on long walks together, and he would tell me about what should we do? Asking me as though I could actually contribute something substantive. I was like 18. And also before that, he had asked me to. I worked for him, and I typed up things for him, and he was such a micromanager, and it has an eye for detail, and it's not me. So we would clash over finding typos, and I get mad. But anyway, that was when I was like 16, 17. But I learned because he had such a fascinating job. He spent a lot of time actually in Yukon and other places like that, but in Nevada and Yukon, Alaska, Northwest Territories. But I just found it to be so interesting, and I wanted to kind of be my dad. And then when he hired a shell company, and the idea was to grow and build growth, and then to agreement for sales, then and then it came time to make the sales. I got to be a part of that decision process. I don't know what kind of part, but I was in the middle of it. I got to listen to a lot of questions. So I'd say it was a kind of apprenticeship. And then later, in my roles in different jobs, I basically was given, I guess, projects through volunteer experiences or small projects. And then I had my own little company, which I made really strategies in. I decided to reinvest in oil and gas leases, and then downturn hit and I couldn't sell them. So I got to eat those leases as they expired. So I learned the value of diversification
well,
in my 20s.
It's interesting because most people that come to us, when we ask them that simple question, which, you've got a great answer because you're blessed with having somebody who's a fantastic mentor and a leader as your father. And most of us learn how to do strategic planning, and we learn most of our business acumen by the School of Hard Knocks. These days it's a little better. 20, 30 years ago, it was maybe trickier to find high quality instruction and guidance. In the advent of this word called coach and the whole idea of strategic planning. One thing we fell on probably about 10, 12 years ago, we started doing strategic training. We call it a strategic leader program, and we teach people the art of how to do strategic planning. And the biggest thing is most people just don't know what strategic planning is. So we use the Harvard model, which everybody taught, but it's supposedly founded based on the whole the most effective methodologies behind strategic planning. But the one thing is they have to be simple and effective. They have to be easy to understand, easy to deploy. Now, once you confuse or complicate anything, you lose people in the mix. So what we do is we inject the foundation of strategic planning into companies, usually as the outset of what we do when we're doing any development of any type. And once we actually inject that foundation in place, we can start to see the areas where you've got leadership excellence and you've got leadership opportunity. And companies like Boston Consulting Group and McKinsey, different companies like that are strategic specialists. It's interesting because they'll come in with their expertise and their experts, and they'll deliver their recommendations, and they'll hand off the file work, and they'll walk away and leave it up the company to deploy what those objectives and what the goals might be. And it's interesting because over the years, we've really developed a very quiet, referral only, reputation of the Envision Group, where we come in and we help teach people how to do strategic planning, and then we stick around one leader at a time and help them most efficiently align them and deploy them so that we can really get the results going in the best and the most fast, the most efficient of ways. And it's fun. It's like putting a puzzle together, but every puzzle it can be solved, but every puzzle has its own authenticity and its own differences, because no one company is alike. And that's the best part of it, is finding the creativity behind every leader and every team. One strategy at a time.
Okay, so I have a challenge for you. Okay, so one of the biggest fears I see that people have is that, like, planning for the worker-free workforce, the workplace, robots and automation. So how do you work with developing trust with leaders when the goal of that company is basically to eliminate a lot of people? How do you work with that?
Well, we're all still gainfully employed, and we haven't been automated yet. And I don't think that full automation is going to be a reality in the workplace, because once we have autonomous cars that are driving us around the world, and we have robots that are doing everything for us at home, we can start worrying about that. But today there is automation, there's efficiencies, but there's always going to be a human concept to every single business. And if there wasn't, we'd all be inhuman, and we wouldn't have there would be an inhuman approach to business. So, efficiency and automation are going to continue to come. You've got artificial intelligence, you've got, robotics that continue to advance and continue. But the fact is look in the oil industry, look in the manufacturing, look in aviation. I don't think we're going to have people trusting, a pilotless plane from one destination to another, let alone a driverless taxi. And I know the world's heading in that direction right now, but it's heading in that direction. But the thing is there's still a human component that's, do the three of us completely trust computers? I think that trust factor's got a ways to go before we're actually going to see business eliminate people completely, because, today, the push for efficiency is there, and you can tell this is a hot topic for me. But, the need for people and quality leaders is probably far greater than the need for machines to make decisions for us.
Okay, Scott. Yes, good, Scott. I was going to ask your opinion.
So I'm not going to pretend to be an expert, but I know a lot of the research that's being done, and they predict the jobs that are going to be lost in the next 10 or 20 years. Those jobs don't tend to be the leaders. Those jobs don't tend to be the positions where you're relying on experience, on people skills, on the ability to engage people. Automation is coming, and it's going to tend to take more of the frontline workers, which is unfortunate, but it's those people that have the skills to be able to interact, relate, lead, engage their coworkers and their peers are the ones that are going to thrive and evolve as we go forward. So I think that ties in perfectly to our conversation today, which is organizations and people willing to invest in themselves and their people to be able to make better decisions, to be able to better problem solve, to engage in critical thinking. Those are the kinds of things that machines aren't going to take over. Those are the kind of things that companies are starting to realize more and more, that the technical training that's been so core for a lot of these organizations, and is still core, is only a stepping stone. The next step to that training really is now getting into, as Pat said before, the soft skills, the bedside manner. And so the people with that kind of vision and that kind of skill are the ones that are going to thrive going forward.
Okay, so I have another scenario for you. Okay, so let's say the city of Tulsa, Oklahoma called you up and they said, okay, we have invested in a big place called the Gathering Place, which is a true thing. We've put, I don't know, $900 million into it over the last 10 years. And we have new festival areas and parks and gorgeous stuff and walkways. Now we need to have we want to become the festival city, because we think that will generate a lot of jobs and tourism, and you can't just roboticize or automate all that. So How would you get started with a city or community that wants to start launching a lot of festivals and attract people?
What, from an automation side or from a human side?
Strategic planning, from strategic planning side.
Well,
They want
it's
to
interesting
transform
because
their economy.
Yeah, want to transform their economy. I just think that just off the top of my head, first off, we've got to understand why. Like the very first question, we've got to ask why before we understand how they're going to do it and what they want to achieve at the end of the day. It's being clear on why, and everybody's heard of the Simon Sinek videos and the golden circle and the start with. It really comes down to that, because what's the purpose behind it? I think if everybody understands the purpose and they're clear on it, when there's automation and when there's a human dynamic involved, people are going to begin to understand the reason, the opportunity for efficiency. And even look in the case of I could talk about another case in another industry altogether, but it's looking at an organization that needs to really pull things together. We've got to understand the purpose behind it, and then we've got to understand really the vision of what they want to accomplish, and then really get down to the values of how they expect value behavior-wise to make that happen. And it's interesting because within a community, if they want to take and grow things out, you've got an area like Tulsa. I love Tulsa. Tulsa's a beautiful city. It's got so much to offer. There's so much that could be had. The question becomes, is Tulsa promoting what Tulsa has to offer well enough? And again, my background, I do a lot of work in tourism, so you're hitting on a lot of emotion backed into it for me, because I love the whole idea of taking and making tourism a bigger industry for every single city that we're in. So understanding the purpose of why they want to do it, understanding what they want out of it. It's interesting too, because there's different groups and there's different cities, different locations to nations around the world. That's sometimes it's interesting to help some of the people within the Tulsa community understand the blind spots of what they have to offer and what they could be promoting, and that comes with perspective. Again, you look at some of the group that we represent with Envision. Many of us are retired executives that we've been there, done that, and we've got the T-shirt. It's not to say that we know how to do it right, but that perspective can erase the blind spots from a group to enhance their purpose and enhance their vision. When you get people really excited about their purpose and really excited about what could be had as a vision, now you've got a bigger reason for engagement to put behind the plan and to get people rallying behind it. And that, you can't rally a computer, you can only rally people. And when you get people rallied behind something, and now you've got passion, people make decisions with emotion and back it up with logic. And once you get the emotion high in the right direction, focused in a direction, now you can get the populace of a group heading in the right direction. A great video, by the way, Susan, if you want to get onto YouTube, just type in the words dancing, Leadership Essentials Dancing Guy. And it's a video of a crazy shirtless dancing guy at the Gorge at an outdoor rock concert doing a funny dance. And when he encourages and completely welcomes his first few followers to his cause, it's amazing. And that's the same thing also. Now, followers beget followers. And when you get people who have clarity and are on the same why and the same purpose, and they have a very clear vision that's very similar, you start to multiply the people who are backing the cause. And it's people, not process, people, not computers. And when you get people back behind that, you start to get people who create enough, like two's company, three's a crowd, and a crowd is news. When you get 3, 30, 300, 3,000, 300,000, now you've got a reason to come to Tulsa. And that's something I think if I was going through strategic planning, we use that mindset and start growing things, right, Scott?
I'm just going to reiterate what Pat said about why, and thinking about it again from the Simon Sinek perspective. It's really, really important that an organization understands their why. Why do they exist? What is the purpose of what they're doing? And then if you're talking about an organization or a city like Tulsa, it's important to also understand what is your customers or your potential customers' why. Are they coming to Tulsa simply for a tourist experience, or are they coming to do something that they can't do anywhere else, to experience something that is meaningful to them, right? So just because you have a plaza, that doesn't solve anything, but what does that plaza represent? What would be the the motivation or the intrinsic value for me and my family to choose Tulsa over another destination. And I think a lot of times we get caught up in how fast or how shiny or how efficient our product or solutions are without really thinking about the why somebody would choose to visit our town or to choose our organization as a business partner. So it's the whole point about understanding the why. Why are you doing something?
That's a really good point because, for example, Tulsa has a miniature horse show every year. And I became fascinated with miniature donkeys, and I thought it would be fun to have something called Small is Beautiful Festival and have miniature donkeys and sheep and things. Now, the problem is it was a good idea, and I talked to people, but I didn't have enough subject matter expertise to make it happen. But I could see that why people came together, because they had them themselves, and then they wanted to be able to communicate with others who had either the same miniature animals or just different miniature animals. And then there were those who made the little miniature harnesses and the little outfits.
Well, Susan, I'm doing a little proverbial break stand here, excited in a big way, because again, when you help people envision more than they can see without you. I remember Scott, you and I were sitting in Bismarck, North Dakota, and we're doing a shop for a group of people in oil and gas, and this one gentleman in the workshop sat back. We asked him, he said, why do you come to work and what's your role in the company? He said, I build roads to land leases. And, Scott, I think you and I looked at him, and he had a thick skin, and we had some fun at him and a sense of humor. So we kind of threw it back at him. We said, well, that's kind of boring. And then there's another guy in our workshop. His name is Jake. And Jake is, he's a highly strategic guy. He works for a company called WPX Energy. Give him a little plug there because Jake's an awesome guy.
Oh, I know WPX. Yeah, they're here in Tulsa.
Yes, they are in Tulsa. And as a matter of fact, Jake looked at this other gentleman sitting in the room, and he said, you don't just build land leases. He said, you pave the way to other people's success. And the whole
I love that.
Yeah, because words matter, and this is something. Oh, sorry, I must have cut out for a second. But when you train people to come up with words that really engage, that's part of what we teach people how to do. And not a lot of people, they have blind spots around that too. And when you train people to say things in a way that gets the eyebrows going up, that has people saying, Gesundheit, use me, and when they're actually sitting back and they're, you're really getting them to a point where they're saying things in a way that gets other people inspired, excited, engaged. Now we're using all those corporate terms, but forget about them. If you forget about it, if you can get them excited about what they want and what they need, they're going to put 10 times more into getting it done. And so, I think that's probably the longest way I've ever answered a question. But if we're coming in to help somebody with strategic planning in Tulsa, that's the foundation of where we're going to get started.
Right.
Scott's being all serious about this right now, right, Scott? This is exactly what we do.
Well, so the exercise that Pat's talking about is we do an exercise where we help people come up with their individual or their team's mission, vision, and values. And it's interesting how people will explain themselves and say, I maintain roads, right? Does that get you excited? Does that get your team excited? But when you say, I clear the way for other people's success, well, that's something. So that's a why. I get up in the morning to clear the way for other people's success is way more engaging than I make sure that roads are clear so people can get to the landing.
Right. Well, I'm sorry to say that our time is up because this has been a really wonderful experience. As Scott, Donald, and Pat Lipovski, I just want to thank you again and thank Envision Group for providing a wonderful experience and a wonderful episode of Life Edge. Hope you can come back sometime. And if people want to get in touch with us, thank you. If people want to get in touch with you, we'll make sure that we have the contact information in the show notes.
Very good. Thank you so much for having us on. We appreciate it very much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.